Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 110. So we're going to do something a little bit different with our meditation tonight. We're going to do a movement meditation. So if you're somebody who usually gets kind of bored and has a hard time being still while you meditate, this will be a great exercise for you. But before we jump into our topic, I have a couple of announcements. We're going to do the good news, bad news. So let's start with the bad news. There are only 1 or 2 episodes of Wind Down Wednesdays left before I go on my hiatus for my surgery. I will be taking about 8 weeks off for physical body work, massage especially, probably 6-ish weeks off for energy work and virtual sessions. And then I'm thinking maybe 4 weeks for the show, but all of that is kind of in flux. So if you're interested in watching my personal journey, I am planning to document that on TikTok. So if you're not following me on TikTok, you can find me at Paula Taylor Energy. I will be giving short updates and kind of business updates through Facebook and via email in terms of just when I'll be coming back, if there's been any changes, shorter or longer, that kind of thing. The good news is that when I am back, I'm going to have my very own dedicated space here in Tucson. I'm going to have an actual physical space for my business. I am going to be sharing space with my friend Michelle at Brightway Wellness, which is in Midtown Tucson. And we are planning to do an open house probably in December sometime to kind of celebrate my grand opening in that space. I'm really excited to have a space where I can do both workshops and classes and one-on-one services. I'm excited to grow my business in this way. So that's the good news if you're in Tucson. And of course, if you're not in Tucson, I'm going to keep doing virtual offerings. We are going to do virtual sound baths. They just kind of didn't happen before all this other stuff happened that is forcing me to take a hiatus. So tonight we are going to talk about being gentle with the body. And this is a continuing episode in our trauma healing series. And this is one of those topics that kind of, I think I understood mentally, but like somehow it just finally fully integrated into my system. And I started watching this contributor on TikTok. His name is Dr. Sam Z. I highly recommend you follow him. It's Doctor, the word spelled out, and then Sam Z with no spaces. He probably has an Instagram, but I kind of like TikTok better. And he is a doctor that focuses on trauma healing in the body. And so what I realized, would kind of like blew my mind and then was sort of like, oh, hey, this is really obvious, was that I have been talking for 2 years on this show about being gentle with yourself. We did a whole show back probably 100-ish shows ago called, I think I called it Letting Go of the No Pain, No Gain mentality, where I talked about how hard we are on ourselves and kind of how we've internalized that idea of how our worth is tied to our production. But every time I talk about being gentle with yourself, I tend to focus on emotionally and then kind of energetically. I don't really talk too much about being gentle with yourself physically. And so this big kind of aha moment I had as I started watching Dr. Sam Z's videos where he was talking about if you have a history of trauma, and we've talked about this many times before, I just never really made this connection in my own mind. And so I'm guessing I'm not alone. So when you have a history of trauma, if you're neurodiverse in any way, and he always points out if you are queer, that's the words that he uses, you have absolutely had trauma. And you're wired a little bit differently in the brain, maybe from birth if you're neurodiverse, maybe due to the trauma. And so what that means, and we talk about this really, really often, is that we don't feel safe. What trauma does to us in our bodies is that it makes us feel unsafe. Whether the trauma was physical, whether it was sexual, whether it was emotional and mental, in the body we feel unsafe. And that actually rewires our brain. So we start carrying around all this tension. And I talk all the time about how trauma frequency is stored in the physical body, right? You think that I would have made this connection a long time ago, but I am dealing with this too. I am healing from this too. And so sometimes as I learn, that I like to share, because again, if I didn't know this, I'm guessing there's other people out here who didn't make this connection. So at the same time, as I talked about, and I've mentioned a lot of times as well on the show, we are taught to go all out on things. We are taught to, as my friend says, go ham, physically especially. You know, we're raised practicing and playing sports. We're taught to compete with each other. We're even in the massage world. I have so many clients who still come to me and they're like, I want deep tissue. And that is not what their body is asking me for. That is not what their body responds to. That is one of the reasons I practice energy work, is because it's actually more effective on the physical body a lot of times than deep tissue massage, than physical massage. And again, I don't know how I didn't link this in my own mind and body, but the reason is because we need to feel safe in order to have any kind of release, physical, mental, or emotional. So and I'm going to go with the massage example because it's the easiest one, I think, to understand and for me to talk about, because I've been doing massage for almost 20 years now. So when I have someone and they come and they lay down on the table and they say, my shoulder really hurts, I need you to really get in there. Usually the first thing that happens when I try to get in there is that it armors up and it gets even tighter, or it goes into a full-on spasm. And so what I tend to use, especially for the back, is biotouch and energy work. And I've mentioned biotouch a few times on the show. So biotouch is a form of gentle touch where you use a butterfly touch and you barely touch the skin with 2 fingers. And I had this aha moment even today as I was thinking about this topic. The reason that biotouch is so effective is because it is so gentle that you lay there on the table and your body starts to feel safe. This person that they're not touching you any harder than this butterfly touch. And the body goes, oh, wow, I don't have to armor myself up. I don't have to worry that someone's going to drop an elbow in my back and I'm going to have to tense up even more than I already am. And that is like a metaphor for our bodies in general. I spent a huge amount of my life trying to be athletic. My sisters are runners. I always wanted to be a runner. I hurt my knee pretty irreversibly trying to just even train for a 5K. My body is just not something that my body wants to do. But we are taught to beat our body into submission. You will do what I want you to do. As a gymnast, that's kind of your whole thing is pushing through pain. I remember the first day or two of our preseason when you haven't done gymnastics for a while. After you start doing these weird things with your body, you can literally, I would have to just roll myself out of bed, or my friend and I would laugh because we could barely get up and down the stairs at school. So essentially, it is a normalized part of our culture to be really hard on our bodies. And that is internalized to the point that we really believe in that no pain, no gain thing. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all aspects of our being. And in order to release these frequencies of trauma that are stored in both the energetic emotional bodies and the physical energetic bodies, they're stored in all layers of our being, our body has to feel safe. And if it's actually making me teary. If we've never been gentle with ourselves, then our body is on alert even with ourselves. When I started watching Dr. Samzi's videos, he's hilarious. I really highly encourage you to go check him out. And we're going to incorporate some of those exercises into our meditation tonight. But he says things like, we're going to start turning our neck now. No, turn your neck 10% of what you think you should be turning your neck. Or there's one for the jaw where he's like, we're going to stroke down the side of the jaw. No, don't dig into the jaw. It's ingrained in us that we have to just go as hard as we can, as soon as we can. Even practicing yoga for like 20 years, I don't practice the same kind of yoga I used to because I learned the hard way after getting injured multiple times that I was pushing myself too hard. You're not supposed to just go all the way to the edge of a stretch. You're really supposed to ease into things and breathe and let the body open up. It's supposed to be a gentle practice. But again, we're taught to be competitive in almost everything we do. And I had a terrible time practicing yoga with other people and not looking and being like, oh, that girl's bent over further than I am. I better push myself even further. Again, it's like ingrained in us. Even if you're consciously trying to get out of that, it's a really hard habit to break. So when I started watching these videos and I started listening to this man talk about how gentle we need to be with ourselves, how we need to find pleasure in even the way we're touching our bodies. You know, when he does get into stretch, so he talks about first you need to feel safe. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're just going to do some really gentle movement. We're not even going to stretch. But he says safety, then stretch, then safety. So even when you go to stretch after you do your safety, he doesn't want you to crank your neck all the way to the side as far as you can go. It's like start, about halfway to where you can go and just breathe. And this is a process. We talk all the time about stepping out of fight, flight, or freeze and into the ease response. This is part of that process. This is part of the process of actually rewiring our brain to understand that the body is safe. And again, if the body doesn't even feel safe when you're alone with yourself, how does that work when you go out into the world? How does that work when you're with another person? How does that work when you lay down on a treatment table and somebody digs an elbow into your back? It just, again, it's such a simple idea and it just blew me away. And I'm sort of obsessed with his videos now. And again, I highly recommend you check them out. He's got all parts of the body. And so what we're going to do in our meditation tonight is just introduce some of that gentleness to our physical bodies. And I will just say a little disclaimer here. I am not licensed as a movement therapist in any way. I'm not a licensed yoga teacher. This is not meant to be a substitute for any of that. So anything I tell you to do, and I'm going to keep reminding you, just like he does in the videos, go to 10% of your capacity. If we're doing range of motion, and I'm telling you to kind of flex your wrist, you want to barely flex your wrist. You don't want to crank down and go as far as you can, because again, the body does not feel safe even when we're alone because we are so hard on the body. And again, it's it's something again that's so simple. And I've been talking around this topic, I think, for a really long time. I've been talking about being gentle with ourselves emotionally and energetically. And then we talk about how important it is to release frequencies of trauma from the body. But I'm not sure I've ever gotten to this idea that the body has to feel safe. We talk about getting out of fight, flight, or freeze and into ease. And that's essentially what we're talking about. When you are in fight, flight, or freeze, that adrenalinized state, that sympathetic state, the example everyone always uses is that you're being chased by a predator. That was our hunter-gatherer ancestors. There's a saber-toothed tiger chasing you. And so you're not safe. And so your body goes, oh God, I'm not safe. And all these things happen and your digestion shuts down and you fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you're hiding, you're running, you're trying to fight back. That is literally the body going, oh my God, I'm not safe. And because we're not confronted with those kind of situations very often anymore, we are confronted with physically unsafe situations. And especially if you have a history of trauma. Physical trauma, again, sexual trauma, emotional trauma, verbal abuse, gaslighting, all of that stuff is telling your body that you're not safe. And until we start to train the body in what it feels like to be safe, we're never going to get that frequency of trauma fully out of our bodies, out of our energetic fields, out of our emotional fields. I posted about this show. I saw it is very hectic for me. It's very stressful right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done before I have the surgery. There's the surgery itself looming over me, which is very scary and stressful. And so I've been kind of like in this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that brings up that old trauma frequency. All of the fears that I have that haven't been resolved, that haven't been released, totally unrelated to this surgery or this big move I'm making with my business, all these other fears start to get triggered. And pretty soon it's like a full-on panic, or it's full-on grief, or it's full-on depression. You know, you can go from like 0 to 60 like that when it comes to triggering. When it comes especially to trauma triggering. And so when your body's like kind of always in this state of like adrenalization, I don't know if that's a word, semi-flight, fight, or freeze, you know, you're not full on panicked, but you're just never feeling quite safe. It's gonna take us time to retrain ourselves. Oh my gosh, I'm safe. I'm not gonna crank my neck as far as I can just to prove that I can. And that's the last thing I want to kind of say is like, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And I think some of us with a history of trauma, because we survived, have this like streak of defiance. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to show you how tough I am because I survived. And that gets internalized too. So if I tell you, oh, just move your neck to about 10% of what you can do, like there's a little voice inside you that's like, F you, lady, I'm going to 80%. You can't tell me what to do. I'm a survivor, right? I'm tough. And the thing is, you absolutely are, but you don't need to be anymore. You need to find out, we need to start understanding what it's like to be soft again, to be gentle again, to be safe again. We've had plenty of experience being tough and being survivors. If we want to transmute, I don't know, I totally lost that word. If we transition, that's it. If we want to transition out of this survival mode and into thrive mode, some of that involves finding safety in the body. And we're going to do that through gentle movement. And again, if you're not somebody who usually likes the meditations, or if you have a hard time kind of sitting and being still, we're not doing that in this meditation. If you want to stand up for this meditation, absolutely you can do that. This is all about finding that gentleness, finding some safety in the body. Again, we're not even going to stretch. We're not even going to get to that step because I think so many of us don't even know what it's like to feel that gentleness. And we're going to do a little bit of, I'm going to call it self-biotouch. Technically, biotouch is one person touching another person. I don't want to use the word massage because most of us, your mind instantly goes like when he was doing that one for the jaw, you start pushing in. I'm going to get these knots out of my jaw. And then the body just armors up even more. So we're going to do some gentle, kind of really light stroking of the body along with this movement. Almost like you're petting a dog or a kitten. And that tells the body, oh, you're safe. You're loved. How often do we tell our bodies that we're loved? You know, I talk about love on the show all the time. And for me, that physical aspect is I think the hardest. And this is probably why I finally understand when you are a survivor of trauma, while you were in the trauma, you separated yourself from your body energetically. You're hovering outside your body. And that is a protective mechanism. That is to keep your body safe. And as we come back into the body, it's really uncomfortable because the body doesn't feel safe, because the body's never felt safe. And we've been out of our body for so long that like we don't know what our body's supposed to feel like, you know? So we're going to start retraining ourselves to feel that gentleness, to feel that softness, to feel that love that our bodies deserve. Even when it's just us, our bodies deserve to feel loved by us. And that will create that safety so that these old trauma frequencies can be released. So for the meditation tonight, again, we're going to move pretty much through the whole meditation. I'm probably going to keep my eyes open for a lot of it. We'll do a little bit of sound. I have a beautiful new bowl that I was gifted by my friend Michelle at Brightway Wellness, and it's got a really kind of cool, lots of overtones. So as we bring this gentleness into the body, then we'll use a little bit of sound to release any of the frequencies that are ready to be let go of. This is a powerful practice. Just because something's gentle doesn't mean that it's not powerful. And that is something that I learned from doing BioTouch. Just because you're touching the skin lightly doesn't mean that there's not a whole world of change happening within the person that you're touching. Seriously though, check out Dr. Sam Z. You won't be disappointed. And I want to give credit to him because some of these exercises are kind of coming straight out of the videos I've been watching. So let's meditate together. So find yourself a comfortable position. Sitting up is probably most effective for this meditation, or standing if you'd like to stand. And again, this is more of a movement practice. This is a movement meditation. We're going to move different parts of our body. We're going to do a little bit of that gentle stroking of our body. And throughout this entire meditation, I'm still going to call it a meditation, less is more. If you think you're being gentle enough, be even gentler, because you will find that this ingrained feeling of needing to be tough, of needing to be hard on yourself, is taking over when people start to learn BioTouch. I'm getting off the meditation already, that's fine. The first thing that happens when people learn BioTouch is that they push too hard, especially massage therapists. You're not supposed to even see indentation in the skin. It's supposed to be completely light on top of the skin. And I guarantee you that as you start to do some of these movements and some of this kind of stroking motion on your own body, you will be pushing too hard. So if you look down and you see an indentation on your arm, that's too hard. Literally, this is like just the barest butterfly touch that we're going to use. So get nice and comfortable. Let's take a couple of oxytocin breaths as we always do. Breathing in through the nose, letting the belly float out strongly. Sighing that out breath out, that audible ha sound. Tell your body right away, it's okay to relax. We're coming to a safe space here. And energetically, if you'd like to draw your sanctuary to you, if you're not familiar with that, just imagine that you're sitting in a really beautiful, safe space. Maybe you're out in nature or you're in a building that makes you feel really safe. Maybe you have a memory of being someplace that was really safe. Just imagine that you're kind of sitting there right now. Close your eyes for just a moment. You can open them in a minute if you'd like, but just to start with, just very, very gently shake your arms and hands. And if you're not able to do any of these movements, do them to the best of your ability. Again, less is more here. So shake barely. Shake your hands and wrists barely. We're going to start there. That's one of the places I like to let tension go. And see, I can actually tell I'm holding tension in my wrists as I do this. So really let your wrists flop. Barely move them. You're barely moving. Maybe 10% of your capacity. And then let that come still. And let's just do some gentle neck movement. So we're going to go back and forth, tipping your head, your ear towards your shoulder. And again, you want to go 10 to 20% of your capacity here. Try to go slowly, but if that feels like it's building tension, you can go a little bit more quickly, but you want to make this slow. You want to tell the body it's okay to relax. You can keep your eyes open or shut here, whatever feels comfortable. And you might get a feeling like, wow, this is boring. This is dumb. Why am I doing this? That's a trauma trigger. So notice that and then just keep doing the motion. And you're just really gently moving here. And then allow that to still, and then very slowly we're going to move our head left and right like you're turning your head. And again, 10% of your capacity here. This is not a contest to show how big your range of motion is. Just really gently rotating your head. And I will tell you that I can already feel my body starting to relax. I can feel my belly releasing as I do this, even though I'm not focusing on my belly, because this gentle movement is telling the body it's okay. Everything's okay. So now really gently again, shrug your shoulders up and release them. And again, like 10% of your capacity. Don't bring them all the way to your ears. Slow movements, as slow as you can make them. Again, if the slowness feels like it's building tension, you can go a little bit more quickly, but this is not a dance. This is a slow movement. And you might find as you kind of loosen the shoulders up that your neck wants to move. So now we're going to bring a little bit, I'm going to call this the Stevie Wonder. We're going to bring a little bit of kind of flowing motion into the neck. So we're sort of pushing our chin forward as we move side to side. There's no right or wrong way to do this other than keeping it really gentle. Bringing a little bit of flow to the body. You're going to find your torso moving a little bit with this as well. We did this torso movement a couple weeks ago. We're just adding a little bit of a head movement. If your neck starts to feel tired, then let go of the neck and just move the torso. And let's do that now. Let go of the neck. Just let your head kind of move along. Just moving your torso back and forth. And again, like 10 to 20% of your capacity to move here. And you might find, like I was just called to take a nice deep breath. My belly's softening. We walk around with our belly pulled in all day, tense and tight, protecting those internal organs. This gentle movement is also bringing blood flow. As we move the body, it encourages lymph to flow. That's one of our body's ways of removing toxic and waste materials, is that lymph flow, and it operates based on your muscle movements. You get venous return, so the veins have valves, but muscular movement helps that venous blood kind of return back from the periphery of the body, from the hands and the feet. This feels so good. I'm having a hard time talking, interestingly. Like I feel like I'm going into a trance a little bit, and that's perfect. And if you don't feel that, that's fine too. So now keep that torso movement. Nope, let's let that go. That's too much. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of really slowly let that go, because I feel the flow, and or you can keep it, whatever feels good. But focus now on the wrists and hands, and we're going to bring our hands up really slowly, relaxing the wrists, and then bringing them back down. And again, this is like 10% of what you can do. Really slowly, we're just kind of, this is similar to an exercise in Qigong where you're kind of bringing your energy ball up and down. And let your shoulders relax while you do this. I noticed I was kind of raising my shoulders up. Let your shoulders relax. We're going to really slowly start to circle the wrists. And again, I'm talking like 10% of what you can do. Go the other direction with the wrists. Good. And again, I feel my belly releasing through this whole thing. It's like, oh yeah. So let's do a little bit of torso circles now. And again, like 10% of your capacity here. So you're rotating around. Your hips are still. This works best if you're sitting. So if you're standing, this is a little bit like you're doing a hula hoop. But if you're sitting, your butt's just staying still and your torso's moving in slow circles. If you feel any discomfort, then you need to back off. You need to make your circles smaller or slower or both. If you feel a sense of stretch even, you might want to back off. And again, if you're starting to get some emotional response, like, why are we doing this? This is stupid. I could do so much more. Recognize that as a trauma-triggered response. Absolutely, you could do more, but you don't need to, and your body doesn't want you to, not right now. Your body wants to feel this safety. Slowly bring those circles the other direction. And again, if you're feeling stretch, maybe back off a little bit. If you're feeling discomfort, back off a lot. Slow down. And then we're going to do a little bit with the hips, very little bit. I'm sitting, so you might not see me very well. I'm going to turn to the side here. So just start bringing your knee up, just really, really gently in. You can't really see me. So we're not bringing it all the way up like as far as you can go. That's not what we're doing. Just slowly kind of lifting each knee, like kind of like you're marching in your chair, marching in place here. And again, like 10% of your capacity. Like I just realized I can feel this in my low back. So that means that I'm lifting too much. I'm going to come back to face you and kind of, I can't really do this. I have a table in front of me, and you can keep your, actually I just changed so that my foot is staying on the floor, and that feels a little bit better to me. So I'm basically just pointing each foot, and that's lifting so that's giving me a little bit of hip movement. Again, I just realized I'm going way more than I need to, like 10% of your capacity, barely lifting your heel off the ground. And then little tiny ankle circles. Keep your toes on the ground and like barely move. We're going to do one leg at a time here. Just one direction, the other. Ooh, that's nice. And that's what I keep hearing on these beautiful TikTok videos from Dr. Sam Z. This should be pleasurable. This should be enjoyable. This is not exercise in the way that we are taught. We're not punishing ourselves. We're not burning off calories. We're moving our body in a safe way so that it feels good, so that we remember what it's like to have some pleasure. Go to the other foot, rotate. Again, like 10% of what you can really do. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to tip the hips forward and back. And again, if you're a yoga practitioner, like this is called cat-cow, and you're probably ready to just go all in, don't do it. Just like 10%. You can put your hands on your hips and you can kind of feel your pelvis tilting back and forth. And then don't worry, we're going to come back to that awesome torso wave that put me in a trance. We're going to do a little bit of gentle stroking or BioTouch-like movements, and then we're going to come back to that torso dance, I'm going to call it, as we do a little bit of sound. So come totally still for a minute, maybe close your eyes. Just check in with your body. How does your body feel? Does it feel softer? Does it feel happier? Is it like, what are you doing? I don't know what you're doing to me. Maybe it doesn't trust you yet, and that's okay. We're going to come back to this, and I encourage you to come back to this meditation. I encourage you to come back to this movement. So as you're ready now, just gently introduce that sort of back and forth in the torso, side to side. What I like about this is that we're getting movement in almost the whole body here. Like I'm getting a little bit of movement in my hips, but again, just a little bit of movement. Like I just got a twinge in my low back. I'm going too far. You could barely move at all. You could move to the point that somebody who was looking at you would barely even notice. And if you want to keep that, you can. If you want to let that still, we're going to do a little bit of this kind of self-stroking, self-soothing, not massage. So let's start, let's come still for this, just so we can focus. We'll come back to that. My body's like, I love it so much. So take 3 fingers or even 4 fingers, put them on your cheekbones very, very, very lightly. Like you're barely touching. Again, if you can see a dent in your skin, you're pushing too hard. And just stroke down the side of your face. If you're wearing glasses, you might want to take them off. Just very gently. And like right away, I feel this sense of relief. Like my jaw's like, oh, you're not going to dig your fingers in, trying to get my knots out. Like, no, I'm just here to bring safety. I'm just here to bring love today. And again, if you're pushing into the skin, if you're indenting the skin, if you look in the mirror, you shouldn't even be able to tell you're touching yourself. And now we're going to go from that same kind of point on the cheekbones. Actually, we're going to go down. So we're going to come up to the crown of the head, kind of let your fingers meet, and then just stroke down, all the way down to the chin. So from the top of the head, down the temples, in front of the ears, and then down to the chin. And again, I think I'm pushing too hard. Very, very gently, barely touching yourself here. You might notice that your body wants to take a deep breath. And if this movement's too big for you, if you're getting anything in your back or neck, just go back to doing it from the cheekbones down, or take a little break. Go back to the torso movement. And then let's let that go for a second. Just notice how that feels. Maybe move your neck. Again, just 10% through the range of motion that feels good to you. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're actually going to stroke down the top of our arms. So the acupuncture meridians run down the top of your arms and up the inside of your arms. So we're also moving chi this way. We're moving energy. So very gently stroking down the top of your arm here. And you can do this with your arm relaxed. I'm holding my arm up just so people who are watching the video can see. And again, if you see an indentation in your skin, you're doing it too hard. Back off. And then as you're ready, let your arm gently open the other direction, and then we're going to start at the fingertips. And who doesn't love having their hand stroked? It's like the best feeling, right? So gently along your hand, up the inside of the arm, right up into the armpit, even across the chest a little bit. These meridians run into the chest here. Just really gently. I'm going to relax my arm a little bit because it's getting tired. And you can do this with your arm almost all the way at your side. Just really gently. And we're going to do the same thing on the other arm. So going down from the shoulder to the top, all the way to the fingertips, barely touching, barely touching. Notice how nice this feels. Notice that your body, again, you might be getting a triggered trauma response and you might be like, this is terrible. Or you might be like, oh, I like being stroked. This is nice. I should stroke myself more often. Let your arm roll open, starting at the tips of the fingers. And interestingly, my hands are getting really hot because the energy is moving. So this is a physical exercise that we're doing as we go from the fingertips up the inside of the hand, inside of the arm. But this is also an energetic exercise. We're working with the meridians of the body to move energy. So now let's do this. We're going to do really gentle thymus stroking. So the thymus is behind the breastbone and just going down along each side of your breastbone, barely touching, barely touching, barely touching. And then let's bring our hands kind of together. Nope, one hand, whichever hand you want. And we're going to stroke the belly in a clockwise motion. This encourages bowel movement, but barely, 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 barely. We're barely touching the skin. When we do this in massage, we actually push in to go with the direction of that large bowel to kind of help move any stagnation, but just barely touching the skin is moving that chi. My hands, you might notice your hands are getting hot or you're feeling tingly. My whole body's actually starting to get hot, even though we're really not moving much. So for the next part of this, it's probably easiest to stand up, but you just do the best you can. We're going to go down the outside of the legs. And if all you can do is go from the top of your thighs to your knees, that's what I'm going to do because I'm sitting in a chair and I've got a table in front of me and I don't want to bonk my face on the table. And again, we want to keep this really gentle. So you maybe don't want to try to reach all the way down to your toes. But we're going, you can come all the way around from your tailbone and down. Again, barely making contact. Down the outside to the knees. And if you're in a position, if you're standing up and you want to go all the way down to the outside of your feet, you can. But again, keep it gentle. And then starting on the inside of the knees, we're coming up to the groin and back to the outer hips. Again, we're following the lines of chi, the meridians. So we're encouraging flow down that gallbladder, urinary bladder meridian that's on the outside of the leg, and then back up through the liver and the kidney, the spleen meridians. And I can feel my belly relaxing again. So now just come still for a moment. Maybe take a deep breath. Notice how you feel. We're almost done here. I really do encourage you to come back and do this and notice the difference over time. The first few times I did this kind of gentle movement, there was some triggering that came up. It felt a little bit uncomfortable. It felt a little bit like, what am I doing? This is silly. I'm not getting anything done, right? My worth is tied to my production. I have to be getting something done. I need to be stretching. I need to be building muscle, whatever it is. Just let that go. Come back to this. So if you like now, stay still for this last little sound bit, the last couple minutes here. Or if you want to introduce that gentle torso motion, if there was a motion that really called to you, but again, really gentle, like at this point, 5% of what you can do. If I was watching you at home, I might almost want to barely see you even moving. It might just look to me like you're swaying ever so gently in a breeze, or you're listening to your favorite song and you can't help but move just a little bit. Now that the body feels safe, I'm just going to introduce a little bit of gentle sound to help release any of the frequencies of trauma that maybe are ready to be released in this softness, in this beautiful gentleness that we built in the body. Say hoo, sa say ho, hey ho, sa say ho. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho. You are so safe. You are so loved. Allow yourself to let go of anything that's ready to be released that is no longer serving your highest good. And come back to this feeling of safety in the body as often as you're able. Introduce these little movements into your day. Maybe you sit at your desk and sway back and forth ever so slightly. Letting the body know that it's safe. Letting the body know that it's sacred, that it's cherished, that it's loved. And even if you don't feel that yet, this practice will help plant the seeds for that body love to grow, for that body respect, for that body reverence. Think about all the things your body does for you. Your heart beats without you having to think about it. All of the complex processes in your brain and your nerves, in your organs, digesting food, giving you energy so that when you're ready to accomplish, you can. But recognizing that your worth is not tied to those accomplishments. Your worth is inherent. This beautiful body is worthy just by existing, just by being united with that beautiful divine light that is your soul. You deserve this gentleness and this love. Allow it to stay with you. Come back to it as often as you can. Sosa Sheata Sheo. As you're ready, take another deep breath or two. Gently move your head and neck if you like. And again, just go to about 20% of your capacity here. Even if you're doing a little stretch, recognize that most of the time you maybe push it too far too quickly. Move your feet and ankles. Again, just barely circle your wrists and hands. And affirm with me out loud if possible. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I treat my body with gentleness and respect. I am fully present in my body, and my body is safe. I am safe. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a practice that is very worth continuing, that is very worth coming back to. This is a practice that will allow you to release some of these trauma frequencies on your own. And if you find that emotions come up and you need help, please reach out for help. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and your week. Be gentle with yourself on all levels of your being, physical, mental, and emotional. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.